user group and make a couple of introductory notes that we don't often have. Specifically, that we have actually changed our hosting for NatickFOSS.org so that it no longer is housed on the server that Richard Miller, Dick Miller, our founder,
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear us okay?
We can, thank you, Dick. Anyway, that was Dick, our founder, who is chiming in just as we get going. And I'm making the announcement that the current NatickFOSS.org is being hosted at the BLU server. And NatickFOSS.org is officially an independent organization, and that's very nice.
Oh, this doesn't work with that.
We'll have more to say about issues with our organization as we get toward the end of the meeting. But welcome everybody that's here. I am sharing my local copy of the agenda, but you probably should note that the agenda is also visible live, so that if you get really interested in seeing NatickFOSS.org in your own time frame, you can go right here. And this is the actual, I think I'm getting feedback from Dick and Jill's computers somehow.
Turn it off.
This is the draft agenda that actually was made earlier this morning, and it's exactly the same content as the one I'm working off from my local computer. It is not the same page. My local computer is just a simpler format. We've tried to maintain the format of this page in order to have everybody who is seeing us and not regularly involved in these meetings to know that it's still us. It's not some other group trying to challenge the great work provided by Dick and Jill over the years. This is NatickFOSS.org, part 2, part 1.5. Anyway, this layout still works, and we'll see whether we need to make modifications to it for users who are on tablets and phones. But for now, if you rotate your tablet or phone sideways for the long wide view, the wide view shows this quite nicely, even though it's a table. Tables still do work in the web. So, the good news is FOSS News. FOSS News is always good news, I hope. Linux has reached a worldwide desktop use of 3%, which is its biggest percent, I think, ever. And this article that is a link here discusses how that has happened and perhaps why. Somebody commented that they thought one of the reasons might be that China has probably decreed that everybody use nothing that is strictly American, and that means Linux is a very good choice because it's a worldwide phenomenon, not something that started in Redmond, Washington, or down in Southern California.
Alga, right now the shared screen looks like just a white page.
A white page?
Yep.
That's not good, because I'm sharing my
Maybe unshare and reshare.
NatickFOSS page. Let me go unshare. Ooh, I do see
It changed.
nothing.
It changed.
Yeah. What is going on here? painful? I'm going to see if
Go
I can.
to
Honey?
the three dots and hide the whiteboard.
How did I get to the whiteboard?
That I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, it definitely says whiteboard.
Interesting. All right. I got to reshare here, I guess. Entire screen. Allow. And there it is. Show me what I'm sharing. Oh, that's back to the old days. What's going on here? How
There
about
it is.
now?
There it is.
All right. I'm going to try to stay away from trying to look at anybody while I do this meeting because something is happening I don't really want to know.
The youth learns quickly.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we may begin to see success on the desktop, and that would be a good thing, I think. Somewhat less good news is that the issue of how things are shipping has been raised by a couple of different people. Red Hat has, for its Red Hat Enterprise Linux, done a couple of things recently that make people a little nervous. There's a distribution issue that says, I'm only going to share what is routine. We're not going to share our mainline products because we now are really very tightly tied with IBM, who is, I guess, sort of our owner at the moment for Red Hat. And that has caused the, I forget the name, the other version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux is up in arms over free software not being shared freely. And Martin Owens, in his video here, the relationships question, says that those who are not tightly tied together in any particular relationship may very well find that they are not getting what they want. And he speaks very eloquently and very informally at the same time about how difficult it is to expect something from a distribution and or a software project when you aren't contributing either financially or otherwise, code or something like that. So we may be seeing some
Phone here is turned on.
fracturing of things in the near future, which wouldn't be good news like the 3% news. Anybody else have any reactions on that?
I like Ubuntu.
Well, Ubuntu has its own evolution going on at the moment. Maybe some forking.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get someone from Red Hat at a BLU meeting, maybe in August or September or something like that.
Maybe you can then pass that information along to see what the logic behind this fracturing appears to be.
Yeah, and the objection, of course, is that Fedora is supposed to be open source and is supposed to include the stuff that is open source. But Red Hat is not under the same obligation.
Exactly. It's that question of what the relationship obligation is between different groups. And we all like to think that we're all going to get exactly what we want out of a piece of software. But if all we are is just routine users, our concerns may fall on relatively deaf ears because the connection that we have is so fragile. We're not paying any money to the project. We're not necessarily paying any money to the project, and we're not submitting code, which was one of the early reasons that people had relationships within a project.
Yeah, well, historically, companies like CentOS have pulled the RH Red Hat Enterprise and provided it as a free software. Then, of course, Red Hat bought CentOS, and now there are other companies that are doing it. And now SUSE Linux is going to pull that Red Hat and provide a free thing. So I'm not sure what's happening out there.
It seems to me that you can't include all open source software within a distribution. But I'm a little unclear from what's been said as to whether they're blocking access to LibreOffice or just not shipping with it.
I think it's the lack of shipping, because the distribution, as I read, said, look, we have to verify that this will work in our environment. And our environment is just slightly different from the environment where this software was developed. And as a result, if you can't provide us a packaged product that we can just throw into our mix, we can't ensure that it's going to work. And it's your fault for not providing us what we can use. And that's one of the reasons I think some people are calling for distributions that do not rely on deb packages or Yum or any of the other versions that build from source, that you get a package that works. And that distribution should be using that method, Flatpaks and snaps and that sort of business that we've talked about before.
Related to this, there is a distro that has been trying to start up called Ultramarine, which is basically Fedora without the RPM packages, only Flatpaks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's somebody doing that.
And this later link down here, distro packaging model is broken, actually carries on with that thought. It's a video from a fellow whose name is Nick, and I know no more about his last name, running as the Linux Experiment for videos. And he has a regular channel on YouTube, one of the videos being this one, this link. And he is of the opinion that we need, as software users, to begin to expect to see only packaged, containerized versions like that, Flatpak or Snap, in the future. He's not pushing for the model to change instantly, but that's where we ought to head, so that everybody can get a solid experience instead of having to rely on Debian packages or RPMs that are 2 or 3 or 4 versions old and not up to snuff.
Yeah, when we get to that topic, there are arguments against it, especially, I think Joe Miller has mentioned, problems with Snap and moving data in and out.
And that is not answered, but addressed within that link eventually. All right. One piece of the top group that I kind of skipped over for a moment was this computer science curriculum that isn't really something that you or I are probably interested in, but if you talk to people wanting to get a degree in computer science, it is now apparently possible to take an entire series of courses online from a variety of reputable universities. And this list is not just something easily thrown together, but was a curated group of good courseware. I don't know anybody that has used it, nor do I think it's the ultimate list, but it's kind of interesting to think that if you're talking to people who want to follow in your footsteps, you can point them in the direction of some pretty good resources. Ethernet, the thing that I'm plugged into, which is working for you and less for me at the moment, is 50 years old this year, or was last year. That's kind of an exciting piece of history.
That would probably explain why it's not working for you.
Yeah, they've thrown all the bells and whistles of high-speed fiber to the household into the mix, as I'm using that, and for whatever reason, I'm having some issues with it. And I didn't get the chance to troubleshoot before we started the meeting, so we're just dealing with it. We're dealing with it just fine.
Albert, are you saying that's a hybrid technology you're using?
I suppose. I guess I'm getting Ethernet over fiber delivered to the house. Once it is at the wall of the house, my actual internal feed is by coax cable.
Ooh, talk about mixing media.
And then it goes to my router. And from the router, I am running the standard Cat5 cable to my laptop in the living room. And even though my picture appears to be still to everybody, I am moving my head much more than I probably should.
Well, all I'm saying is, what could possibly go wrong with that kind of a mix?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely. Another piece of history there is the really simple syndication feed issue. Some people actually think it is dead because Google Reader was shut down several years ago, but the format still exists, and I actually do read my majority of common feeds by using my Thunderbird. This whole bottom section of the folders that I have on my Thunderbird screen shows some of the videos that I watch and some of the podcasts that I wish I had time to listen to an hour of. But it's easy to get into a feed. You just create one. You can look at the feed that I set up for my own Mastodon feed. And if you know the resource locator, the URL of any available feed, in my case, it's mastodon.art, alga.rss. Instead of being HTML or otherwise, this is a feed. And the results of that feed come to my Thunderbird, and I can read what I'm interested in reading. And this particular one isn't so that I can read my own posts to Mastodon, but that I can verify that they are being fed. And I find that quite helpful to me to verify that sort of thing. Oh, I wanted to close back out of here. And I just closed my Thunderbird. No, I didn't. There, back to this screen. Good. I use, as I say, Thunderbird, which we'll talk about in a bit as it becomes a new version. There's a version 115 Supernova that has just been dropped, and Dick Miller kindly provided that link to the announcement, and I'm sure he'll have something to say about it, but I just wanted to finish up the comments from our member Laura, who uses Quite RSS for reader feeds, and also has written a nice online tool for creating the alternative for really simple syndication known as an Atom feed. Both of those are designed to be machine readable so that you can get feed information, and that's kind of cool. Yes.
At what point are you planning to do a demonstration of how this works? I've been sort of wondering about RSS feeds for a long time and wondering what actually comes up and how it's presented to you.
Well, let me go to my own website. I'll be back to this page in a bit, but let me drop back and go to my home page. And up here in the corner, really simple syndication is often shown as a sort of broadcast symbol, like the one here. And what you are feeding is a bit of text that is in a format known as extensible markdown or markup language, XML. And if you have control of it, you can have it display any way you want. I'm showing my clip art list, but in fact, the XML is text that otherwise has no style associated with it. It's just a text file specifically designed to be like an HTML file, but not. It has different kinds of items, and they're very strict about what you put in each section. There's a channel that you have. There's a title for your channel, sort of like what you have for a title of a YouTube channel, the NatickFOSS YouTube channel, for example, that might actually have a feed that we could republish some way. I haven't looked into that possibility, but YouTube has feeds if you know how to get to them. This feed is the RSS clip art feed of my website. And each item, as you can see, is the title of a clip art, the source file, the link, a second version of the link called a GUID, it's like a URL, but it's not. The gasoline-powered leaf blower is the description, and the publishing date is important only because it is how a machine software recognizes whether it's new enough to pick up. If you go to a feed with a piece of software like Thunderbird or anything else, it's going to look at the last build date, which in this case was the 5th of July, and the ordering of this date is supposed to be exactly like that. The day in 3 letters, a comma, the date of the day in 2 digits, the month in 3 letters, and so on. Those are very specific requirements. And if you're going to validate yourself against...
Well, that's how to make one, but
Yes.
I was just wondering how to use one, how to
Well,
get, like Laura
but-
just mentioned that NPR has a lot of feeds. So if I wanted to go to NPR and look at their feed, how would I do it, and what would it look like once I subscribed or whatever you do?
you need a feed reader program.
Yeah, you don't have to go into it now. I think it
Okay.
might be a good topic because I'm totally clueless on it,
Okay.
and I would expect that there are others who are as well.
All right. I think that's a good topic for another time then, because I'm not entirely prepared to show all the details of how that's done at the moment. And I'm sure that there are other things that people do want to talk about. Okay. Thank you, Laura, for chiming in to help us with that. I missed seeing it, of course, because I'm sharing my screen and looking at what I'm talking about. Now, snap-free Ubuntu, I don't know much about. It was a suggestion from one of the Discuss mailing lists. And I think Dick is considering talking about Blend OS. Is that correct?
Yes, is this a good time to begin?
I think so. I'm going to unshare my screen. If I can do that by getting to the right place here. And, oh, that's an ugly screen. Anyway, I have unshared and it's all yours, Dick.
Are you going to want to share a screen, Dick? Because you're going to have to do it on my computer.
That's right. I think not. I have a lot of things that are going on I want to talk about, but I think I'm mostly introducing them and giving you a place to read online afterward for each one of them. They're all just hatching. I think next month, a few of them will be right for a demo, but not right now. So that's that background. Joe mentioned earlier today that you can't include all the applications in a given distribution. I'll take the snap-free Ubuntu and pick it up at the last one in this hot software section because it's one flavor of a lot that people are playing with. But Blend OS, we, like the Debian branch of Ubuntu, of Linux, we like the Ubuntu branch of Debian, and in recent years, more and more, we've liked a very young fellow's version of Ubuntu called Ubuntu Unity, Ubuntu Unity. And Ruja Saraswat writes it, and he's in India. He's, I think, almost ready to turn 14 years old. His English is not only excellent, but up with all the current slang. I want to point out this 50th anniversary of the Ethernet is how come people all around the world can now hear, see, understand each other. And Rudra is an excellent example of being in on US stuff and elsewhere, as well as what he does. He's, of course, brilliant. He started his version of Ubuntu when he was 10 years old, and it was good. And so it goes. Why all that when I'm talking about Blend OS?
Blend OS, by the way, V3 is not in the beta. It has been released.
Because Blend OS is Rudra's latest main project, and he does think that all these different flavors of Linux that are going out in different directions are separating people, not putting them back together. Blend OS directly and fully, as far as I can tell, blends some of the most popular flavors of Linux and is seeking to work well with other flavors and add more to a thoroughly supported set as people join in. It's the opposite of forking, and it looks like it's going quite well. It's not the first time it's ever been tried, but I think it may be the most major one to date, and it's available. You can pick it up and play with it. It's not quite in final release form, but I think that close that it might be within a month. I'm not positive about that. I think he's not either. I think all the users will be feeding in that consensus. But it's got his usual good thinking and good programming. And I think it's major. It's the only one I would feel comfy hopping onto that is ready to handle Fedora native, ready to handle Ubuntu native, ready to handle Ubuntu Unity native. It's got a list, and you can click on the link and go read all about it, both from internal and external looks at it, and you can try it yourself. Pretty fair offer, and it's from the guy that cooked up Ubuntu Unity when he was only 10. He's a lot older than that now, and this should be even better. Or not, but there it is. I think it's going to be big news when everyone finds out they can run on it and maybe share and demo more easily by using it. That'll be maybe early next year. So let's keep an eye on it, and you can read all about it. Thunderbird has been around a long time. Once upon a time, there were about 4 different packages that led to it. By packages, I mean something like Microsoft Office. It's got all those regular tools you want to use at the desk. And Netscape comes to mind. It is a fairly recent one. And it eventually went open source a long time ago, changed names a few times, and became Mozilla. Mozilla majored more and more in Firefox, and bit by bit phased out most, but not all, of its other excellent tools that had been aboard earlier. And Thunderbird was pioneered by it, bringing the email section up to date back then. And then it got less interested in Thunderbird, but the open source had lots of extra people participating worldwide. And Thunderbird just moved over to where it was sort of under Mozilla's wing to some degree as a paternal sort of an interest. They hadn't walked away, but they had stopped developing it, left it to this other volunteer group. The volunteer group has maintained Thunderbird quite well, and they've done it on a semi-shared basis with Firefox. They still wanted to be compatible where Mozilla was compatible and have the benefit of all that worldwide crowd working with them too. Turns out the plan was to just build on the internals of Firefox and keep adding features and reliability and whatnot, but built on that same programmer base internally. They fell behind on that due to lots of other projects going on, taking up time and such. They've gone back to rebuild the fundamentals underlying what users see. Not what users see, but what's under it, to get back to compatibility with the latest Firefox, which has also been going through that kind of a major rethink. There's a lot of old code down low that isn't well maintained anymore. There's a lot of code down low that wasn't trying to be malware proof to the extent that is necessary this year, etc., etc. So the internal engineering is making its debut for Thunderbird, as it's just made its debut for Firefox. And they've given it a mighty name, Supernova, and they've leaped ahead. I believe the current release going into Supernova is Thunderbird 102. And suddenly they're leaping to 115 because that's the Firefox that they're in sync with now. And you'll be seeing that kind of renumbering in the future as they try to stay in that gear very religiously, let me say. So everyone gets the benefit of the latest, greatest underlying code as well. It's got some tricks on the top as well, some nice new things to do. And I will mention one that's aboard in the distro, but it's also aboard in the latest release of the Thunderbird 102. It's an interesting one. It's just a hint of things to come. And goodness gracious, TinEye. TinEye is a quite separate project, very professional and well-funded, very powerful. And say you, as a hobbyist, decided you'd like to set aside a computer.
Is that on Thunderbird or Firefox?
It's going to be on Firefox and fit in with Thunderbird. They're all coming together. Thank you, Jill. The TinEye is bundled in the Firefox side. What it means for a user is you can go anywhere on the internet and look at any image and right-click on it. And one of the options will be TinEye, a reverse search. It will look through its little collection of what images are on the internet. And from that, it'll feed back to the ones that match the image you clicked on. This means if you have an image, but you don't know who originated it, you can trace back. If you have an image, but you wish it was 3 times the size of the dinky little one you found, you'll probably find it, etc., etc. How about copyright? How about ownership? Whoever copyrighted it, whoever owned it, still does. On the internet, all they've done is provide a correlation tool that allows searches. By doing that, they can gather all the images. You are still responsible for finding out what the rules are for using it. In general, if you are using it commercially, you should contact the owner to see what you can and can't do with and without money, etc. And if it's not under a money attached ownership license, you can give credit where credit is due. We try to major in those. And for your information, it is constantly looking at what's showing up new on the internet or what old things just got put back onto the internet. And it's currently somewhat limited at 61 billion images on the internet, and it grows rapidly. So this is an incredible research library. I went in with an obscure image, a lovely wallpaper I just made from an image that was passed on to me, and I wanted to know, where is that? Big snow-covered mountains reflected in a lake, and just a spelling picture. I'll share it afterward. And so far, I've narrowed it down to either the Everest Massif from the India side, or from the Pakistan side, or it's in Alaska. And I've got a bunch of other theories that aren't as well adhered to on the many hits that I found. It took 1.1 seconds to feed me the results. How do you feed the results into TinEye? The way I'm doing it now through Firefox and LinkedIn Thunderbird now, I right-click on the image that I found, and I can tell TinEye to sort them in terms of the oldest one first. I'm looking at the original one that got posted. Or I can tell it in terms of the highest resolution first, and I've obtained some very high resolution ones. I normally work at 2560 by 1440 pixels. That's better than most computer displays can do. They handle that just fine and go way beyond it. So this is a wonderful add-on tool as you're trying to give credit, utilize a wonderful image for what you wish they'd done with it. You can do it now. And these are all merging together. They're sharing root underlying tools to make them work better together. So on the side for Thunderbird Supernova, it's just a piece of a bigger package you can put together the way you like, but the underlying tools are back to where they all believe each other smoothly. I like it. Ubuntu Unity, Roach just went back and did all the same things on that. And it's got a version that is 23.10 in beta. That'll come out in late October, synced with the latest Ubuntu from late October. But its beta is out there happy, and the improvements in 2304 paved the way for that. So he says he and volunteers working with him are very far along on that conversion. I've got a few months to go. That's a whole bunch of things that all sounded different when I first heard about them. But the more I looked at them, the more they're part of what my new Linux package is going to look like, and perhaps totally differently to the user's eye. Yours may also. Keep an eye on all of them and how they're growing. And now I think we're ready to go back to snap-free Ubuntu and forward to all the other flavors of too many different tools. They're all good. They were all developed for some good reason, but it's getting confusing out there. So I think I'll leave it to someone else to pull all that together in terms of what all the different rethinks are about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dick. Okay. Anybody else have thing about hot software to chime in on? Is that a hand raised? No.
Yeah, I added that Snap for Ubuntu. That the link that's there I found on a search because miraculously I was able to get Ubuntu installed to a thumb drive. I've since learned that my desktops are at the point where they cannot reliably install or run Linux from an external source like a thumb drive or an external SSD. So I've basically given up on that. But with the Snap Free Ubuntu, the individual snaps have to be removed in a specific order. However, as I had it on a thumb drive, when this process was all said and done, there was no difference in the speed of the performance on it. So I really can't say if it would work on installed to desktop hardware.
Okay, Ed, thank you very much. I mentioned this distro packaging model being broken as a kind of a segue follow on to the Snap Free Ubuntu and all the other questions of how we're going to consume our use of Linux, expanding it from 3% to 5 and then 5 to 10. And Linux will eventually take over the world, right? Maybe not. Blatant tech frauds running amok, and 4 terabyte solid state drives. Those, I think, were both related to something that Dick came up with.
I'd also like to go back just a bit to the distro packaging comments and the early on one. Linux has gotten much more popular in the last 5 years. That's the good news. And somehow that much more popular is up to 3% of the users out there, typical desktop, laptop users. Good news, bad news. All this discussion is underlying what a typical user ever sees. These same problems are going on in Windows, but the user doesn't see them. And part of the problem is Unix is so popular with developers that the discussion scares away casual users. Jill's and my Miller Microcomputer Services for decades has been pushing Linux for normal users. And we and those clients of ours, then and now, because a lot of them didn't have to be clients after half a year, they had everything they wanted and they knew how to update. It's as good as the commercial ones in that sense. I think people don't understand that yet. And these talks don't make that enough clear. So I wanted to go back to all this discussion is golden down underneath, but of no need to know for the people that use it just from up top. That was the comment. Now I want to go on to hardware. Latent tech frauds, someone else put that in, but I'll just open with the fact that hardware, other than the computers themselves, has gotten stunningly better for the person, for the user, for the person like us who sets it up for a user. Just a year ago, we couldn't come close to what we can now in upgrading a computer. And the quality is very high, not just on the most expensive flavors, but on some surprisingly inexpensive flavors that we've been tracking or that we watch others tracking, and they're reliable. The data's out there for that. This one I only saw a couple of days ago, and $160 will get you fast 4 terabyte on a standard 2280 SSD stick that'll go into most fairly recent computers, or you can add it in various ways. It's a hell of a lot faster than a hard drive. It's a lot faster, but not a hell of a lot faster than those solid state drives that are designed to plug in like your old hard drive on a SATA connection, SATA. So this is the real stuff. It's not the fastest one you can buy, but it's the fastest one most of your computers can run at full speed. So it doesn't matter for a lot of people. And 4 terabytes. I think a year or two ago, there was a rare computer that sported more than half a terabyte. And for your email, you may not care, or you may. But if you're into photography, I think you will. And of course, there's all kinds of experimental things you can do. You can cut your computer into multiple computers in so many ways this year that the extra space essentially gives you different computers in the same little lump. You can just switch between them when you wish. A Windows computer and 3 Linux computers running concurrently. Or you can probably do that in Blend OS without doing that. You can have just so many different ways to reuse the computer, and now, because of all the storage space, reuse the computer concurrently in real time. Astonishing. So this is just a clue as what's coming. I see no reason it should slow down. And the computers themselves are getting better, and they, in general, are coming down in price, but nothing like the speed of the add-on or swap-in components you can get. I want to call attention to it because I think it's going to change how you'll be using your computer if you wish you had 3 different computers that all shared the same data. This is all it takes. And by the way, my computer is only running 3 terabytes, and only 1 terabyte of the 3 is top speed for the computer. And the other one is one of those imitation hard drives slipped right into an existing hard drive slot. It cost me about $200 for that 3 terabytes, 2/3 of which is at good speed, but not full speed. Swell for storing photographs that you're going to process in full speed, etc., etc. So there's so many ways to skin the cat, but the price, that was early this year. We're halfway through the year, and it's changed this much already. It's been changing like that, and I predict that a few major world politicians permitting, it'll stay that way. So that's my comment on it. It isn't the one gadget. You can read about the one gadget and you can order it now. It's sold out in one place, but you can buy it in another. You can buy even higher performance ones, and there's a real good rundown in that link about which one is good for who, for what. But again, they'll change in half a year. And surely the prices on the same ones will. Good. If there are any other hot hardware items that anyone wants to mention, I think this would be a great time eventually. That's the one that really struck me as a big one.
I think the first item there under hot hardware about tech frauds on the biggest online marketplaces is also true. you have to be really careful where you select.
We don't buy from a new group until we've researched it well,
And that's
both the product and the company's return policy, etc. There's a lot of examples of when we've learned how to do that. Again, the youth learns quickly, which usually means painfully.
at least eBay in general will refund your money if you get scammed by one of their sellers.
We like eBay. We like a bunch of the bigger companies. We avoid some of them like the plague. And we deal through eBay with companies that may not be known to us, but the deal looks good. The reviews from independent corners sound good. And eBay will ensure our purchase if the other company doesn't come through. Good to know. There's a lot of fraud out there. I'll just mention the latest spectacular one. Did I get it down? I don't think it's in here. Microsoft just had a huge break through its cloud activities. That means it involved a hell of a lot of people that aren't even on Microsoft. And the way things are going is pretty weird. I'll send along a link for that. You can read about it later. And it's in our own Money is Not Wealth, if you want to go look at it now. You can search online for Money is Not Wealth and then add plus Miller. That'll cut it down from a lot of references. And it's one of the newest posts on there. I'll send it along as a link. The bottom line is there's a lot of trouble out there, and a lot of people are scrambling to do things at a lot of levels to guard against it. I think things are fine in Linux compared to if you were flying blind in Windows. And now there have been a lot of similar disasters on Mac also. That used to be you paid twice as much and asked half as many questions, but they were watching your tail feathers. Not as true any longer. Interesting. I think I'm done. If anyone else has comments.
We might ask if there's anybody who has been burned by one of these marketplace issues.
Yes, we've bought 1 terabyte flash drives that could only hold 64 gigabytes.
I recall that one, yes.
They're marked. They're marked very clearly from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
1 terabyte.
I did too. I formatted everything else, and I needed a larger. I needed a larger drive for my webcam. I mean my dash cam, and I plug it into my car, and I close the glove box, and somebody is echoing me. Dick, can you mute, please?
I will do so.
My own sound is off.
No, but
Thank you. Anyway, when it was, I knew it was not a great drive. Anyway, I put it into my car, closed the glove box, which is open through software, and my screen went blank. And of course, I can't drive without the screen, or I can't see the speed. I can't see my speeds and everything else. So I immediately drove down to Tesla Watertown, and they had to go and open the glove box, and they took out and put in the original USB stick I had in there. I mean, I since put in a Samsung T7 in there. The T7 is working fine.
That
It's a
is
lot
scary.
of problems with T7. but I couldn't. I knew those thumb drives were bad.
That's more burnt than some.
I have a. We've also discovered that once upon a time, it cost a lot more to make a high storage capacity thumb drive than a low capacity one. That changed. And for quite a while during the interim, you could buy 64 gigabyte thumb drives that could only do 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes. They were marked that way. But if you learned how to reformat them, you could get the full 64. That's the flip side of this story.
Okay.
Yeah, part of that, I think, was that the thumb drives, when they make them, they format them with FAT, and they don't have the extended FAT for them for the file system. But if you put Linux on it or something else, that extends it anyway.
We have a lot of tools at our disposal.
That's correct.
Okay. Excellent discussion on tech and the hardware that supports our software love. I read a lot of ebooks in my various tools these days. Having that access is wonderful, and it's just a quick note to recognize that the first ebooks were put together, meaning there was a posted online book instead of only having it on paper somewhere. It was 52 years ago. That's a long time for some of us. I'm going to see if we can get down to Dennis here in the next minute or two. He has a game to demo for us, and then maybe I'll be able to come back to talk about the making of web pages part 3. It's not so much a demo as a discussion of what JavaScript does as part of web design. Are you available, Dennis?
Yes, I am.
Then I shall unshare this, and you'll get on to your part.
So I'm not going to share my video because when I started up the program, the audio from you guys talking was a little bit choppy. So I don't know if my audio is going to come through once I start running the program, but hopefully it will. But I didn't pre-record this one because I figured it was a turn-based game, so it'll run fine. That may not be the case. So this particular game is FreeCiv. It is an open source implementation of a game called Civilization. They've had, I think they've had 6 versions of Civilization so far. So they've had a lot of variations of it. It is what is called a 4X game. The 4X stand for Explore, Extend, Explore, Extend. Now I can't think of one of the other ones. And the last one is Exterminate. So the basic premise is that you are a civilization on the world and you are going to spread out and eventually try to take over or control as much of the world as possible. And so now I will start it up and see how my audio is afterwards. All right. Sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we
There
can.
it is.
Yes.
All right, so this is the initial screen. There are scenarios that you can run. I haven't tried them because those are something that the game didn't have when I was playing it long ago. But so let's just start a new game. That's what I was afraid of. You can pick how many AI players you want. It also has multiplayer options if you want. And sorry about the audio. This is weird. Why is the video not right? Oh, there it goes. All right, so you start off with a couple different units. You move them around to explore. Looks like we have a hut right here. I don't know what that does. And then this is a settler unit, which once everyone has moved, you click on this turn done. As I said, it's a turn-based game. Now, there are lots of things going on at the same time, so you can look at what you are researching. And so right now I am researching ceremonial burial. You can go over and look at the cities you have, which I don't have any at the moment. You can look at the various units you have. I think this is probably nations. Okay, it even shows nations that I haven't even encountered yet. Well, let's explore a little bit more. And then we will have the settler unit go over and build a city. So now you can go over and choose what the city is doing at various times. So right now it is building a phalanx unit. And you can say, oh, I wanted to build the Colossus. There are various wonders of the world that you can build that have different effects in the game. I believe Colossus is one of them. There's all sorts of settings here for different things that you can do with your city. There's governors that allow it to run the city itself so that you don't have to do as much in maintaining it, which is kind of important when you get, 25 cities. You sit there and you don't want to manage each one necessarily. So this is the general parts of the game. It's pretty slow starting off. When you start off playing this game, you only get a few things going on each round. But the core of these type of games is to make it so that later on in the game, there is always something going on. So every single time you sit there going, oh, in one more turn, I will get whatever I wanted to finish up some other feature. So you click the turn button so that you can get that, and now your civilization has advanced further. And then you notice, oh wait, in one more turn, I will have this wonder of the world finish. I'll just do one more turn and wait for that. And it kind of is addictive in that respect, in that as you play this sort of game, you sit there, keep going, well, I'm just going to play one more turn, then I'm going to shut it down and go do something else. And I think I'm going to stop there. I used to play these games a lot. I do not find I have the time for them anymore. The complexity of the systems are high enough that I just don't have time to learn them all. And sorry for the audio.
I hope everybody got the chance to enjoy that. I personally was seeing only a black screen, but I think that that's my end, not anybody else's.
No, we saw it just fine.
That's good. I'm going to have to research once this meeting is over to see what's going on.
And the audio wasn't too awful either.
I was able to hear the audio, so that was good. All right. I'm going to look back at the archives here and see that we are at about 4:15. We've got plenty of time to keep on moving. Let me just talk briefly about the third piece of making a web page. We've covered the majority of what's important to most people who are creating simple, straightforward web pages. But I'd like to just briefly illustrate what's involved in the background of using JavaScript. So I'm going to reshare my screen and allow it. And then go back here. And then go back here to get back where we were on my demo. All right, we talked earlier about HTML, the basics of the coding of a web page, CSS, which offers cascading style, meaning that you can create the look and feel of your page in a nice and pleasing combination of bits and pieces. And then you come to the question of whether it's interactive, meaning that what you see isn't something that was put into the code originally. And I'd like to just focus in on one very simple concept of this, and that is the date that's presented in this section of my web page. This page, by the way, is the articles of NatickFOSS on my website, runeman.org, and I will repost this link, which I found out isn't there from 2 earlier pieces of this demo. But when I put this page together back in February, the date that you see above my pointer was something I typed into the line manually, adding that it was to be shown in bold characters. And then I saved that 4 days later, but that saved date of 22 February in 2023 is not something that I typed. If I were to resave this file today, this date in the middle of the sentence would change to show today's date. It would be formatted as 13 JUL 2023. That is JavaScript. It's inserted information based on the date when the file was saved. And then this last date, the third one in the paragraph, is a raw description of the time when I opened this page, which was 16:14, about 4 minutes ago. And what you're looking at is the date on my computer. If you were to go to this page yourself, this third date would change to reflect the time on your computer clock. These are very, very tiny uses of the JavaScript capabilities. And in fact, JavaScript can be huge in its value beyond just showing you the current date. The menu that I use at the top of this isn't my current menu, so that I didn't have to muck around with this presentation. This is the menu that I created for the website that uses a drop down to show what links I had of interest to me that I hope would be interesting to others. Changing this on this page would mean no big deal. But if I wanted every page that used this menu to have the same links, I needed to make that happen site-wide. And I did that by calling this particular code right here that says, in this place on the page, use the source code of the menu.js script. Don't use some other menu. Don't use what's on this page. Use that source. This was the earlier menu. Now we're pointing at this black line. This earlier menu was done using a different JavaScript script, not different JavaScript, but the specific script. And I wrote a whole article about how that script was developed. And the other piece is that you have to be aware that JavaScript is under someone's control, and that's the biggest issue with it. I control the web page that you're looking at runeman.org, and any scripts that I have put on the pages at my website are mine. I do not pull the scripts from Google. I do not pull the scripts from any other source. And I've made it very clear that that would be the potential for tracking. I don't have any. I don't have any advertising scripts, and all the places you go which have advertising typically pop up these days to mirror searches that you have recently done. If you're just done buying a tool, it will show you more tools. If you're just done buying some clothes, it will show you more clothes. And that is the problem with malicious, or at least targeted or tracking. Those things are all typically JavaScript. So there are people who completely turn off JavaScript, and it's understandable why they do. Now, it showing you the background of the JavaScript is probably not necessary for most people watching this video or seeing it live, because you're not making your own web pages at this point. But these things, the way they work, the way the pieces fall together, are a combination of all sorts of bits and pieces, and making web pages need not be difficult. But if you're going to do it for a profession, you have to learn a whole bunch. And I'm not professional, so I don't know a whole bunch. But there you are, HTML, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript. And maybe XML if you're going to add in the question of doing web feeds. Okay. Back to our archive page. Anybody have questions on JavaScript before I leave that behind? Apparently, nobody does. Oh, Laura says she has used JavaScript professionally, and I bet she's way better at it than I am. I'm just happy to be able to do what I do.
Maybe we can hire her.
Yes, indeed. Okay. The archives page. Oh, reconsidering Mastodon. This was just an interesting article about somebody who said 2 or 3 years ago, Mastodon's going to be a big failure. You can't possibly do what you want to do on Mastodon. Well, he has decided that, yes, he was right 3 years ago. You can't do what you want on Mastodon. It will, however, work if you don't go into it with the expectations of being this 100,000 follower person. But you will have conversations. And I thought that his explanation of why he had changed his mind was very interesting. I hope you'll follow that link at some point to find out if you actually want to reconsider joining Mastodon and or the Fediverse using some other server software, because Mastodon is the name people are now almost universally gripping as the whole system of federated servers. It's really not just Mastodon. It's just that Mastodon as a piece of software is kind of in a dominant position within the federated social media space. And I will admit that social media is not everybody's cup of tea. Expensive emoji. Apparently somebody signed a document without realizing that they had. They agreed in a text message. Okay, yeah, I used an thumbs up emoji. I got the message. We'll talk more about it. But the vendor said, oh, no, no, no. You agreed to the contract that was in the text. And somebody's got to pay somebody else multiple thousands of dollars because of it. That's been a court ruling. And computer security. In Maryland, they put a temporary web link that they stopped owning. And of course, 800,000 Maryland drivers still have those old plates that have the unmaintained website link, which has now gone to a gambling site. And it highlights quite well how you need to control your domain name. speaking of our own NatickFOSS.org, which is a joint ownership these days, meaning as a group, we aren't beholden, not to be negative about it, but we are not beholden to our originating or founding father, Dick Miller. Not that we are unhappy that he founded us, but he doesn't have to be feeling responsible for everything anymore, and that's kind of nice. But we haven't given up the name. He just passed it to the group instead of owning it outright. Okay, how are we doing? We're well within our time. So, Dick, do you want to talk about either of those last two items?
Yes, but first, I wanted to just make a small mention under the online books, libraries, or that was 52 years ago. But in the last few years, our local libraries have been really catching up in spades. Check yours to see what they have to offer in the way of online books and more, and I think you'll be delighted. Our Natick library has some very nice new web pages on the subject, and people that will help if you want to go down there or any specific questions. I think books are going out the same way.
Oh, I like books.
The same way tablets went out a few years before, and I don't mean computer tablets, carving into rock. So you might want to extend that to what your library has to offer in that category. On the computer security, privacy, and freedom, I think the big one has been AI getting more personal, coming home into your computer and into your television set now, and for the new smart ones. And it, again, is fragmenting into a bunch of different directions. Some of them are very powerful. Some of them are reliable to the most part for now, and very few check off both of those boxes. The biggest ones, starting with ChatGPT in terms of popularity at the moment, are taking notes, are misusing your personal data themselves, and in turn, they're getting taken advantage of by others. So ChatGPT is bad news. Too bad. It's a lot of fun. But there's a lot of other ones, and some of them are more reliable. The problem is, as they get more competent, they get to the point where literally they can decide to misuse your data or feed you wrong data, as got popular during recent US elections. And we can expect all these features to grow. The main developers have split into two camps. One of them is actually saying, let's pause and regroup and have a study and see what we can do safely before we do it instead of after. And the other camp says, we're corporations, we're in charge of making money, and this is making money. We don't want to lose our place in the race. And it's about as simple as that, but the spin-off is tentatively, theoretically, very expensive in terms of everything you hold dear, including your home mortgage, your bank account, your country's kind of government. It goes up and down the ladder. And I might add, your connectivity to what used to be an internet. When AI wants to take it down, it's in the right place to take it down. So many different things and so little ability to just say, hold it a minute, let's talk about it before we do it. Nope, that's throwing away half the profit and sharing it with others. Big problem out there, and so some good discussion about it. Any other comments on that before I go on to the next? Guess not. Okay. Taxpayer data. This is where I'd also like that comment about the recent Microsoft ripoff at the cloud level. But again, major reasons to worry about your data because of the way other people get to handle it and mishandle it. I think they should both be in there. And as I said, I'll send away the link to the other one. They're both whoppers. They're just incredible reasons you didn't want to be there. Now you want to see whether you were there. Never mind whether you wanted to be there. Read the article.
Well, tell them a little more about it.
Well, very simply, some of the most major U.S. national tax processors, once you go to take your rough out and get it ready for submittal, they've been sharing it with a feature that you wanted to be smarter than to share it with. But you passed it on to someone that wasn't smarter. It got hit. It might be your data. You want to check the article, see if you worked with any of those groups. And look again in a week to see if they've added any groups. And so it goes. The internet gives, and the internet may take when you're not looking. And don't think of the cloud anymore. Think of the fog. You don't quite know what's going on beyond what you know. And this is no longer a faith-based way to do business. I think that's about it for me on that. Oh, I have one more comment to make. If anyone else wants to get better than me at TinEye, I would love to have someone else demo it, but it's something you want to know about how to add to what you do. And it's now being folded into not just Firefox, but a bunch of other reputable and some non-reputable tools for browsing the web. And they come with it in the package already as of the latest distribution or the one that's about to hit. So you might want to read on that. And the reading is really simple. TinEye.com will get you to a lot of it. And to the tool.
You're sure it was .com and not .org?
Yes.
Okay.
.org may also work. They're present in various number of ways. Mozilla, which I do trust for being smart enough and committed enough, looked at it very hard before they decided to add it in the distribution package. That's why I've been starting to add it to my activities. So I think next month, you ought to get a good demo. And if someone can do that better than me, that's swell.
I just tried it with an image I got from a BBS long time ago when I was in like high school, and it couldn't tell me where it came from.
Try two more. It might be it doesn't have it because you had it before it had a place to gather it from. It started in 2008. So if you have something earlier than that didn't make it into the mainstream, it may have never seen a version of it. And you can add it. Then other people will start building on that.
Well, it did actually have it. It
Ah.
had two places that had it, but it doesn't tell me where they got it from, who the artist is.
Right. It is only doing its almost totally automated gathering, just looking at all the images on the web every day and adding the new ones. It's not doing the other research on one of those 61 billion. There are plenty of exceptions where someone had a reason to do it, found the answer, and now it's part of what's available. How long did it take, by the way, to come up with your answer?
Oh, it was real quick. I didn't pay attention to how long it took, but it found two sites that had it. One of them looked like they were a dump of images from BBSs from back when I was on them.
Your little computer now has 61 billion images and counting that it can sift through in a second. That's astonishing. Thank you, Internet. That's an Internet giveth example.
Okay. Are we into a good place for general questions and answers before I suggest we try to do a little NatickFOSS housekeeping? Have we missed any topic that is hot on everybody's or somebody's list?
Good.
Okay, here we go then. NatickFOSS housekeeping. We are in the process of making sure that lists that are, as stated before, shared resources rather than being just a responsibility for
I don't
Dick
see an
Miller.
actual camera. You could try searching the App Store.
I'm hearing feedback. I think Dick and Jill, you need to mute.
Well, we're not searching the App Store, but
Somebody else is then, I guess.
Sure, I'm is.
Okay, I'll try to continue. We have, and this is for people who are watching and may not have considered getting further involved with NatickFOSS between meetings. We have a list called NatickFOSS Discuss that is described on our main home page, the NatickFOSS.org page. This page that identifies us. And in June, we set this new version of the page up, which identifies that we've moved our posting to a BLU server where it can be accessed by more than just Dick and Jill Miller, giving us the opportunity to ensure that things will be moving effectively as we go forward as a group. We have the NatickFOSS Discuss list server running on the same server as our web pages now. And you can get involved between meetings by adding your name to this discuss list. And the directions are here on this page on how to do it. So you can sign up by going to this page, where all you have to do is fill in an email address and your name, which is optional. Pick a password. And then when you do that, you will be able to share your information back and forth with the rest of those on the list. Everybody can participate. If you are interested in doing that, I recommend that you come to this NatickFOSS.org page and sign up. And then when you have your request approved, which is just a small step in the process, we don't want Chinese vendors or people who aren't really interested in our group to be sending us garbage messages. So we'll verify you are a person and should be part of our discussion. And then you can send emails to discuss@NatickFOSS.org and share your news and maybe even become an active participant during these meetings if you haven't done that already. So, forward, not backward. I lost track of where I was. Oops. NatickFOSS.org. This page also, just for the heck of it, now says last updated, which used to be done manually. This is also doing JavaScript now, so that when the page gets saved, it tells what date it was updated. It's a minor thing, but now I don't have to fiddle with doing that manually. That's a good thing. Back here to our live real page of archives. If you are new to using Mailman, I do recommend that you look at the user manual following the link here. It's a good source of information and tells you how mail lists work in a very effective way. Now, the current meeting, today's meeting on the 13th, was announced using my own personal email. We used the same list that Dick used and announced to about 130 different people. And we have intent to add to the discuss list an announcements only list. But we want to make sure that everybody who is interested gets to see that we're having a meeting and what it's all about. And I wasn't confident that enough people were aware of mailing lists to make the announcement list the live announcement. So this month for July, I sent out just the same way using my Thunderbird account. And I think most people who expected to get an email from us probably did. I hope that some people who didn't get what they were expecting will let us know so that we can improve our process. Does anybody have questions that we can answer and discuss a little bit about mailing lists and why they're different from sending by hand the way we did in the past and the way we have for this meeting? I'm going to unshare my screen. And I don't hear anybody speaking up quickly.
No. Because I just sent a message to the BOU announce list and it rejected it. And I send it to that list every month, and that list hasn't been changed. So I'm trying to figure that out.
As an organization, we rely a lot on technology, and we want to be sure that those who are interested in NatickFOSS always know what's going on. I'm trying to promote as much transparency as we can in this situation. And that's why I'm putting this housekeeping stuff out to the public who are watching this live and or will watch it when they go to the YouTube video.
Yeah, Algot, I think it was wise this time to use your own email to send out the announcement, seeing as how we're still in a transition. But once the transition is complete, of course, we need to move people onto the announced list so that it can happen a little more automatically, or if something happens to you, someone else can send out the announcement.
Exactly.
Without someone else having the entire mailing list in their possession.
Now, the announced list, as Jerry has explained it, because he's our mailing list expert, is different from the other mailing lists. It is not generally intended that everybody can make announcements who happens to be a member of the announced list. My understanding is that an announcement can only come from those who have been assigned as announcers. And at the moment, there is a small list whose names I won't reveal yet, in case somebody wants to remain anonymous. But I am on that list, and I believe Dick and Jill are as well. So, along with Jerry, of course, who set it up. And those people could send an announcement to everyone on the list. And hoping that everyone would get it is the real question of the moment, because our experience with the discuss list this past month has been that some people had to search their spam folders to find the messages, and some people just didn't get the messages for other strange reasons. And we want to ensure that that's not happening to our general announcements list, so that everybody can be up to date on what we're doing as an organization. I can modify the home page to try to explain all this, and probably will. I wanted to discuss it live because this might reach more people that way.
Algot,
Yes, Jim.
I am thinking that we want to set up the announce list, send out the announcements, and then a couple hours later, send out from the old email list that we have sent them an announcement, and if they haven't received it separately, that they should look in their spam folder and set up their spam to not catch those. Does that make sense?
That makes eminent sense. And I think that would be the appropriate thing to do for an interim announcement sometime mid-month before our August meeting as a test run, and then to do the same exact thing with 2 messages and official announcements with the announcement list, plus the follow-up on the day or 2 before a meeting, our next meeting, so that people have a couple of shots at getting it. I know a lot of people do get tons of emails, so things can fall backwards in their recent lists. And you might overlook a message that you wanted to read. So I think a couple of different tries between now and August's meeting would be a good idea.
Helga,
Yes, Dick.
a second thought, maybe they both want to be tried. Send to the entire list both ways, the old way and the new way. On each one in the subject line, say 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, and which one is which. So everyone gets to explain right at the outset, this is a test. Did you get the 2 flavors or not? Now you'll pick up people that never heard the other way.
That was a very good perspective. I did a test run on the discuss list and unfortunately only got 6 responses out of the 17 people who are signed up for the discuss list. And that's what put me off a little bit, because it struck me that the discuss list tends to be people who are active.
Well, Alga, there is a little rule of thumb with anything in technology. As long as it's working, people don't usually get back to you.
Well, okay, I'll take that and run with it. My goal was to not suddenly seem like we were silent.
Yeah, that's the other problem. How do you distinguish between someone who never got the message versus someone who says, oh, this is run of the mill, so I don't need to respond?
Got it.
In other words, not everybody gives feedback unless you explicitly state somewhere in bold letters, we need your feedback on this.
And I'm guessing some people won't either way.
True.
Another comment like that, if you put the bold letters at the beginning of the subject line and say, please reply, I think the rest will follow a lot better. I found that every mistake we make that way leads to a better way of doing it.
Progress, progress, progress.
And hello, Farron McIntyre in France.
Oh, yes. Anybody have last minute wrap-up comments?
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Hooray.
Okay.
Good to have a worldwide reach.
We like it.
Clean edge, Farron, too.
Well, then, wrapping it up from Natick, Massachusetts, we wish all of the entire group watching and observing the progress of technology in our small corner of the world. Bye-bye. See you in August.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to
Bye-bye.
everybody who worked on this.
Yeah.